Hey guys, Happy New Year and 2026, and this is my first video of 2026. And I am working on Boaz from the book that I'm doing for John's Longbox. This is the trading card for Printer's Devil. And right now I'm just working on the inside here of this petticoat or vest right now. And I'm just getting the darks in. So remember, go to John's channel on YouTube, and also go to his Twitter page on Twitter or X. So, but yeah, right now I'm just getting this part, this dark area put in, and then when I get done with that, I'll put in the dark area here. So, just doing touch-ups around him right now for today. So, but yeah, for 2026, I'm doing signed Star Wars and signed G.I. Joe books. And we started the 2026 with the Treasury edition of Star Wars. This was the big book. I still remember getting this as a kid, and just being so excited to have this big comic book. It wasn't like all the other comic books; it was a big one, and I just loved it so much. And so, has Howard Chaykin, Steve Leola, and Rick Hoberg's signatures on it. Very happy to have that. And it's always, like I said, I know I said this in an earlier video last year, but how like Rick Hoberg said how like a lot of people will come up to him to sign that Treasury edition, and how it'll be all like beat the hell, or they'll have like the kids who have written all over it and drawn all over it, like put uh, the Marx glasses and mustache, Karl Marx, on the comic book, and like how like they draw boobies on Princess Leia and all, and how he was always just so tickled how like so many people would have him sign that specific book because it brought them so many memories. So he was always very, 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 always very touched to have so many people ask him to sign that book. So, and it has nothing to do with people thinking, "Oh, this will have money in it." No, it's because they enjoyed it, and he brought joy to them. So, but and I'm gonna do a thin outline here around for separation, but otherwise it's gonna be pitch black. So, and that'll give the colorist the ability to put the blues in to help create some separation. So, but we're just gonna go in as dark as we can, pitch black, if you will, but we're doing it all with dots. And the thing is, when this gets shrunk down, it'll all shrink down to a solid black with a few little dots in, and that's where the colorists will have some fun putting the blue in, so it doesn't look like so it won't be a straight black. So, but I always, especially when I'm doing the comic book stuff, I always will be like slightly more heavy-handed with the blacks, just so that way it looks better, even with the colorist. Because I mean, let's be honest, these days you gotta be these days artists are putting less and less work into the pencils and inks, and because many times they're just doing the pencils and inks themselves on a computer, and they're letting the colorists do all the heavy lifting. And I am not one of those people. I always liked how you have heavy darks and a lot of detail in the comic books. Let's go up here. So what I'm going to do is here, what I'm going to do is with this, where the wrappings are, I'm going to go heavy, light, and then heavy again. So that gives you that curvature. And then what I'll do then also then is when I'm done, I'll go in and I'll put tone in this side, so that way you have some like a light dark push to it. So right now I'm just, oh, sorry guys. Thought I was in camera, but I wasn't. So let's do this again. So heavy, light, heavy, light, heavy. And that's like just the push and pull of a pencil. So again, we'll go light, light, and then heavy. And just do that over and over again. And then we have also I had signed, which I've posted. Uh, we have uh, The Empire Strikes Back, the Treasury Edition. This one was actually neat because I had Rick Veitch sign it, and Rick told me the story. I actually shared it. When you look at the or an X where I have that showed this issue signed, I opened up to the page where he actually wrote on the page itself. What it was, he was the assistant to Al Williamson, and here the uh, the reference material they got for the at here it was just a Polaroid, and Al Williamson was in a mood. So he was annoyed that like the reference was so poor. So he just went to Vix. He just kind of like threw it at me. I'm like, here, you figure out how to draw this damn thing. So when you look at that issue, and the very first page where well, not the very first page of the book, but that first page of the AT-ATs, when you see that, that is Rick Veitch who drew out and figured out the Polaroids of how the AT-AT's supposed to look. And yes, it is an AT-AT. It's not an AT-AT. Okay, I'm OG, and when it came out, it was an AT-AT. Okay, George may have wanted it as an AT-AT, but we as kids, how we looked at it and how we read that as an AT-AT. So it's always been an AT-AT for OG fans like myself. Okay, I don't. Anna, that Star Wars girl, she can try to wring my neck left and right that I'm wrong, but hey, I'm OG. When it came out, that's how we knew it. And all my friends knew it. In fact, I know that's how it was because now this is going back. This is when my sister was just dating her boyfriend, who man would become her husband, and he had a son. And I guess he was talking Star Wars to her, and she wasn't sure what he was talking about. So when they went, oh, we had a family get together, and they came in, and my sister went. She goes, Vaughn. She turned to the boy and she goes, how do you say it? And he's looking at me. He's meet me for the first time, and he goes, AT. I go, yeah, an at. And my sister was like, yeah, see, I was right. It's an at. And he's kind of looking like, no, it's an AT. I mean, look, you can and how his generation was learning through visual media and through not actually through like TV and videos. He was learning it as an AT, and just the ATSTs and all that other stuff. I'm like, nope. And I just looked at him and I go, no, that's what it is. So he was kind of like, I'm wrong, but that's how he learned it. That's how I knew it. Always knew it. It was an at. So, okay, I'm going to carefully go in here. And what I want to do is, I'm just carefully going to put some dots in, okay? And what this is I'm doing is that the bandages are going to have some weight, which means the bandages are going to cast a shadow down. So we're just going to go very lightly in here and just thicken that line just a little bit more. So it's kind of like casting that shadow from the band onto the next band. So I don't think I have any hold on. There we go. So there we go. We got some. There we go. There we go. So and then what I can do also is I can go in, got like this. There we go. So that's adding some extra weight. So it's also because I'm already defining that the light source is this way and the dark's going to be over here. It helps create that curvature of the leg. So there we go. There we go. Okay. So, but no, Rick Veitch, he actually wrote that story of that, how he had to figure out how the AT-ATs were supposed to look in the book itself, which I really like because that adds an extra thing. Not just that he signed it, but he actually told a story, so which I particularly really liked. So, and then we go. I posted. I have the artist edition of Star Wars signed by Walt, Weezy, Al Milgram, and then also I have got the Star Wars Artifact Artist Edition, which I really do like. This one. It has so many signatures. It even has Roy Thomas. I had him when I met him. I had him sign this one because it already had Walt, had Weezy, got Bob Wick, Al Milgram. I mean, has so many has so many signatures on this Artifact Edition, and it has like the pages. It doesn't have all the pages, but it has like pages that they've been able to find, I guess, of the original Star Wars done by Howard Chaykin. Howard's also signed it. But then also has like pages from like the follow up, like the Han Solo story, where he was the Magnificent Seven story that they did, which introduced a whole slew of characters that I really liked. And I remember, I'll tell you something, that Magnificent Story 7, or that Magnificent 7 story, which, yeah, that was like 8, 9, 10, which I got Howard and Tom Palmer both to sign. That was actually one of my favorites because I drew those characters so many times. I drew the rabbit and the girl and the little Star Killer kid. I drew and the robot EB, I think it was. On the it was basically a 3PO or a traction tread tires. Um, I drew those characters so many times because I liked them so much. And these were that. And like, I'll tell you something. I don't think Star Wars would have caught on as a comic book if they'd gone straight to Carmine Infantino. Howard and Tom Palmer do that Magnificent Seven story was so good and so enjoyable. And then afterwards, they had Carmine do the. Oh shoot! I gotta clean off this nib. But no, they had Carmine do the story afterwards. And I'll be honest with you guys, I am not a Carmine fan because first time I was introduced to Carmine was Star Wars. He was doing, and I just didn't like the way he was doing the characters or drew the technology. I just didn't care for it all. It didn't feel like Star Wars at all to me. Whereas like uh, Howard and Tom, they got Star Wars right off the bat and how they were doing it and how they drew Han and Chewie and all. Carmine just didn't. Carmine did not get the grasp of the characters. And how everybody loves Carmine, as a kid and even today, I mean, I can now appreciate Carmine, but as a kid, I did not like Carmine at all. I didn't like how he drew everybody on that like jaggedy. Everybody had like pointy noses and everything, like sharp, jaggedy lines. Just didn't care for it. Just didn't care for the style at all. So, in fact, like I have the entire run now, but at the time, I didn't buy them off the newsstand. I think I had maybe like 3 or 4 issues, and I had them off the newsstand, but I didn't really care for them because of Carmine's work. Um, Now, if I do another video, I'll point out the ones that I did have, which are all signed by Bob Wick because he did a lot of the covers back then, and so I've had him sign all of the ones that he did the covers for, so that I owned. So, but I mean, overall, I just wasn't crazy. It wasn't until uh, Walt Simonson and inked by Tom Palmer. It wasn't until those guys came on board, and primarily it was because of Tom Palmer's inks. And if you ever talk to anybody, uh, like you talk to Bob McLeod, Ron Friends, Walt Simonson, they will all tell you that Star Wars was Tom Palmer's book. They basically just did basic layouts or detailed breakdowns, but he's the one who would actually go in and give it that tone and feel and texturing to give it that Star Wars feel. And that's the reason why Luke, Leia, and Han and Lando looked so good. Even Chewie, R2, and C-3PO, they looked so good because he actually had. I mean, he had a son, but he had all of the toys, so he could look at. He had all the toys whenever they come out with a Star Wars book. with pictures, he had them so he could actually look and see what they actually looked like. So he could put those details in, the texturing in, so they actually looked like those characters. And quite honestly, I don't think I would have gotten into comic books as much. I wouldn't have gotten into comic books at all if it hadn't been for uh, Tom Palmer and all his work with the Star Wars books. Because it was like when Walt and him were doing the books, that's when I really started liking Star Wars in the comic books, getting them monthly, getting them all, but like monthly, going back and buying the back issues that I hadn't been able to buy or off the newsstand. I mean, it was all because of uh, Tom Palmer doing such a great job, which then led me into getting other comic books. So, but yeah, it was Star Wars and GI Joe are the ones that got me actually into comic books, and that's the reason why this year is devoted just to showing you guys the books of Star Wars and GI Joe because I have such an extensive collection of those books being signed. So, I mean, same thing was like if I were to actually like I will see Larry in the month of March, and when I see him, I'm finally going to tell him like, look, when you when artists or creative people talk about like their origin story, what got them into comic books and whatnot. I mean, Larry is and doing GI Joe is my origin story. I never would have gotten into comic books if it hadn't been for Larry doing GI Joe because there's so many times where it's like I would get the comic book, I would go home and I would read the comic book, and then I would carry on, and specifically it would end with a cliffhanger. And if it did, it had a minor cliffhanger, I would then continue the story with my action figures. And that's really the reason why also G.I. Joe, in my opinion, became such a big hit, was because size wise, they're the same as the Star Wars figures. So I was able to have like when I first got like the first GI Joe character I got was Stalker, and I was still I had Stalker and I had all these GI Joe figures. So Stalker was a rebel ground troop. He was a specialist, like a shock trooper, GI Joe shock trooper, if you will, like a commando, and he would go down. He was the one who was like he basically fucked up all the stormtroopers and fucked up all the Gamorrean guards and everything. That's what, and then slowly got the others. And I slowly got to the point where I was only playing with GI Joes and not the Star Wars figures, because uh, they weren't coming out with any more characters because the movies were over, and two, because you could do so much articulation with the Joes versus the points of articulation with Star Wars was like 5 points, where there was so many more like up to like 9 or 10 point articulation with the Joes. So, and as you can see with this shoe, how I drew very little in the shoe, but now I'm just going in, putting tone in, and extending that so it now looks much better. So, see how that, if you go to back to the beginning of the video and look at it, now look at it now, much better. So, but okay, let's do this leg. Uh, yeah, I'll start off that leg, and when I get done with that leg, I'll be done. But no, I mean, Star Wars for me, it was what got me really into comics. It made me aware of comics, but it was really GI Joe that really got me into comics. Because one of the things also is when I started, part of it also was that I got into GI Joe was because they had built a mini market a block down at the end of my block. So my mom would like give me money to, hey, go down buy a gallon of milk. I go down and she gave me, so I go buy a gallon of milk, but then she didn't give me. She gave me too much money. Oh, what am I going? I'll buy myself a comic book. So I got it, and so first it was just buying GI Joes. Then I started buying uh, some DC stuff, and then some Marvel stuff. And that's what really got me into it. Not just GI Joe, but the convenience of having a convenience store so close. So that's one of the reasons why I really got into it, is like the convenience of being able to go down the block to buy a comic book. So and so, but no, that's my origin story. And also part of my origin story is when I was getting to the end where I wasn't playing with my GI, I was getting like too old for it. I started turning my GI Joes into superheroes, and so like Destro, I had Destro as a superhero instead of a bad guy, and he was kind of like your Iron Man character, and Cobra Commander with a hood. He was called like Future Soldier or something like that. And here he had Chewbacca's gun, so he had a ray gun, which was different from all the other guns. And then I had uh, a Superman knockoff, which was Zartan. And so I just took all the Joes, a lot of Cobras, mainly Cobras, and converted them into being, because the Cobras had cooler costumes. Basically converted all the Joes and Cobra characters into superheroes. And at first I was playing with them, and then I started, oh well, what does the costume really look like? Because it doesn't really look like this. So I was like drawing. I then started drawing them as what they looked like, and then we had just gotten a computer. It was an Apple IIe, not the 2C that everybody else was buying or the schools had. I had the 2E, which pissed me off because the 2C was cooler. But my father was cheap and went with the 2E instead, which annoyed me because it's one of those where it's like I can. Everybody else is doing this with a C. I don't understand how. I don't know how to do that with an E. So, but yeah, basically, I mean, I use it as a glorified word processor, and I use the word processor to create who's who entries or official handbook entries, where I had the character on this side, and then I had the text of like their name, their secret identity name, their all their stats, and then history, and then powers. And I had that, so I was creating my own like database of the characters, and just like on the fly as I was typing, come up with their origin story and how like he was working at a factory and he got dipped in a vat of chemicals and he developed the ability to fly and had impenetrable skin because he fell into a vat of steel with had chemicals in it, and that's how he developed his powers. Stupid stuff like that. I mean, the origins of all these characters are so freaking cliche, but it's what really got me into drawing superheroes, and then and then at school, uh, get done with your homework assignment and or get your homework assignment back from the teacher, and I'd look at it, and here I got like a C or a D. I didn't care. I just flipped it over and started drawing on the back of it. So draw my own characters. So that's where we're. Then I did get into like drawing like Superman, Batman, and like primarily like Hawkman and Green Arrow and Green Lantern. And those are the cool characters for me, not Superman, Batman. I could care less about those characters. I like the characters that uh, didn't get all the hoopla. So, and I've always been that way. I always like the characters that don't get the non-popular characters, if you will. So, okay. So I'm gonna do this. When I get done here, what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna have to add. I'll do it over here. I'll do. And what I'm gonna do is let me add some more ink here. And what I'll do is go in an angle. Ink, ink, ink. Get ink on that. The ink well's low. That's why. So okay, just put it in an angle, so that way you get that sense of it, of this one laying on top of this one. So just put them in an angle. So we'll do the same thing over here. Just put it at an angle, just a little bit, and see how that adds. Okay, it adds to the depth of it instead of having a straight line. And you don't need to complete the line. You just gotta put a little, just put like a dot or two in there, and that's what gives you that, because your eye connects it. So, and I'll do the same thing over here. So just a little bit. So And of course, you guys can hear it's because we had snow last night, so a lot of people are coming in here. So a lot of them are snowplow guys who have been probably been up since 4 o'clock this morning plowing roads. So now they're all done and the roads are being treated and everybody's out driving on them. Hey, it's Miller time! Even though most of them are probably drinking Budweiser or Yingling. Probably Yingling, because I live in Pennsylvania. So, yes, Yingling started in Pennsylvania. Even though you can buy it almost anywhere now, it started in Pennsylvania. So, but, okay, guys, there you go. So, I'll work on that. I'll probably finish this shoe as soon as I'm done, as soon as I'm off the video. So, but you guys all have a great day. Stay warm if you live up north. And if you live in the south, hey, I'll be seeing you guys next year or by the end of this year. So, guys, have a great day. Remember, life is stressful. Take it all one dot at a time.